Friends and subscribers, this is China News for November 2014. Happy Thanksgiving wherever you're at. A lot going on here in China this month for sure, so let's get right into it. Let's start off with the economy. Banks are not so keen to offer short-term loans due to concerns about financial risks. This news came out here this month, and it shows that the Chinese economy is indeed continuing to slow. Now, what has happened? Well, the central government has injected more stimulus into the banks, and that may not have reached front page news where you're at, but these stimulus keep coming and they're nonstop. Sometimes they're hidden and sometimes they're small stimulus, but a stimulus by any other name is the same. Okay, what happened? Well, the government injected 769.5 billion yuan into some banks over the past 2 months to boost short-term liquidity. And they're thinking about having more reserve requirements for banks in the face of what is a slowing Chinese economy and different lending environment than it had been in the past quarters. So, with the economic data coming out and news not the way that the Chinese had hoped it would be, we have Xi Jinping coming out saying the Chinese economy is resilient, trying to reassure people that, in fact, China's estimated 7.5% GDP growth this year will hit target. And you can bet that it will because it's a controlled economy. Whether or not it did grow 7.5% is irrelevant. The Chinese will make it so. So they'll cook the books, fix the numbers, and everything will be hunky-dory going into 2015 first and second quarter. And if you believe that, then you believe in Santa Claus. Obama and Xi Jinping meeting in China earlier this month, and among the topics discussed have to do with, of course, the economy and social issues, military issues in Southeast Asia, and of course Hong Kong. Obama reassuring Xi Jinping that the United States will not interfere in the Hong Kong democracy movements. This is to be expected from a lame duck president who is going to be coming to the end of his term. And China realizes this, that Obama is a lame duck, and they perhaps will play the waiting game to see what will occur with the new regime coming in before they get too spicy with their ambitions in Asia, the waterways, ties with Philippines, Japan, Vietnam, etc. One thing's for sure, that among these two men here, the one that you see on the right has got all the tactical advantage that he needs against the lame duck on the left. As I mentioned before, Obama was in China in November, and prior to that, Skull and Bones Kerry was here to meet with Xi Jinping, and in the cartoon shows, there's Kerry with Xi Jinping, and they're discussing, among other things, information on the economy, mutual development and economy, and some political concerns, but not much on military cooperation or military concerns. As you know, China continues to project power throughout the waterways and in Southeast Asia. And of course, many countries have their beefs with China as of right now in Asia. Yet, the United States is seen as playing kind of a hands-off approach to it at this time. And certainly, we're seeing that the Chinese view Obama as being a lame duck president at this point. So I think that when you read all of the rhetoric and you put two and two together, you understand that perhaps the Chinese are going to wait until this lame duck president is out to kind of test the waters and to see where this is all going to be heading with U.S. and Chinese relations. More military buildup in China. China introduced its Y-20 heavy transport plane and its J-31 stealth fighters. They're now testing those heavily, and they'll be ready for full production after the initial planes have gone through their testing. And basically, you can be sure that China will continue to spend heavily on their military and project power throughout Asia and beyond. However, if you look at history, if you look at back to the Clinton regime and before that, you'll see how much technology the West has given China, and you can see that in their cars, their military equipment, and so on. So these two new fighter jets, the Y-20 and J-31, it wouldn't be so surprising if a lot of their design elements are shared with their Western counterparts. Wanted 500,000 pilots for China's aviation gold rush. Now, as you know, China has been building more and more planes, and their airlines have grown in their scope and development and routes, and they're trying to get more pilots involved in this so that China can become a major world player with their airlines and also have more and more fighter pilots too. Alibaba's Alipay gaining more and more ground. 30,000 transactions a second. As you may or may not know, the early numbers have shown that Singles Day in China, 11/11, has surpassed the early numbers coming out of Black Friday in the West. Now, this is no surprise, as you may know, since there are 4 or 5 times as many Chinese than there are consumers in the Western markets, that this is logical that it would happen. You know, more consumers, more retailers, and so the numbers should be higher. 11/11 Singles Day because of the ones, and it's a day that Chinese are encouraged to go out like Black Friday shopping and get sale items, and their payment systems such as Alipay have become more and more popular for this. So they give deals that are too good to pass up, and as I've said many times before, Chinese are the best capitalists that remain, the number one consumers of all kinds of stuff. Speaking of Alibaba, they seek $8 billion US from U.S. bond market. Now, as if their IPO wasn't already a boon for the online retailer, they're also seeking even more funds. So Alibaba trying to be a massive giant, even bigger to the effect than Amazon, and to expand into all kinds of other areas such as website hosting and cloud computing and many other areas. So it's interesting to me that the West is helping to fund this Chinese company when they had enough money in their coffers before their IPO to accomplish many of the goals that they had laid out for the next several years. And this sets precedent. Why aren't American investors investing in American companies and having to invest in a Chinese company that is listed on the U.S. stock market? The times they be a-changin'. But enough talk of economy and politics on Earth. The great space race is on, 21st century, and China is set to be a major player in that. As you can see in this photo on a popular magazine here in China, you have a Chinese flag on the moon, which has been a plan of the Chinese for many years now. That with satellite technology, which they are gaining, and rocket technology, and of course space station ambitions and other types of scientific study, the Chinese are definitely on board with that. Let's take a look. Why by the 21st century will the next man on the moon be a Chinese? Interesting, as they say, that it will be a man. It shows you kind of that China is still a country that prides itself on being male-driven. No mention here of female astronauts in space. Yet, this is interesting right here. If you spend 2 billion yuan, you can build 3 new subways in Beijing. But can you claim to be a rich and powerful country by building subways? This is a Chinese perspective on world politics and power, is that it's really more of what I call Asian machismo, to be able to say, hey, we're a nation that has a space station, we're a nation that has been to the moon, we're a nation that has done this and done that. Our achievements and our economy show that we're great. Well, I always thought that it was a little bit more than that. You have to lead by example through ethics, morality, and the innovation that you created internally. This is not the case today in China. Perhaps it will be in the future. And the cartoon of the month is of course, pun at Japan. As you can see in the cartoon there, Abe shooting an arrow with a red flag and crying as it leads to nowhere, to lowered stock markets, lowering of the economy, and increased debt. Abenomics, which never had any chance to work in the first place, and the Chinese always taking time to take the chance to poke fun at Japan anytime that they can, and this happens on a weekly basis, by the way. In the article talking about how Japan should be more open to its Asian neighbors rather than influence from the West, as their economy and their products are decreasing in growth. And certainly with a nation of a growth to GDP ratio that is not favorable and a debt to GDP ratio approaching 300%, shows you that the future for the Japanese economy is frightening. And it's amazing to me how the Japanese people could still have confidence in the yen, the disaster that is the Japanese economy. This is funny right here. Mother of 120 million yuan official denies son is corrupt. Hubei province official who was found to have kept more than 120 million, or that's equivalent to 20 million US dollars in cash, in their home. Now among this hoard was also 37 kilos of gold bullion, 68 properties that were claimed, and the anti-graft movement in China has caught this official, and the mother is still pleading that he is not corrupt. Now, how exactly did this official in Hubei province get all of this wealth? Was it because of his good looks? Was it because of his brilliant business ideas? Or was it because of bribes and payoffs? You decide. In Shenzhen, another big drug bust, 730 kilo of drugs seized coming in through the cross-border traffic with Hong Kong. Most of the drugs being methamphetamine. And it was seized, and several men were captured in the plot, in the ring. Three of them being Taiwanese citizens, and a couple being foreigners. So as the drug trade becomes more and more prevalent and more sophisticated, you're going to see more international involvement. And as you know, down in Guangdong, that's close to where the Golden Triangle is. So you can bet that this is just a microcosm of how much drugs are coming in and out of that area in south of China. And the competition between the Chinese and the Cambodians, Laos, Vietnamese, Thailand, and so on, and even Burma, in the drug trade. It's a huge profitable business. It's one of the most profitable businesses you can be in besides, well, medical and a couple other areas. And the Chinese government is rumored does have an operation. And you can bet that these Southeast Asian nations also have government operations in the lucrative drug trade. And this goes back many, many, many years, way back to early 20th century, where you had the opium trade, but you also had heroin trade that came out of Southeast Asia and was backed by the West. In fact, it is not well known, but FDR, Delano, is part of his name. The Delano family on that side were major supporters of the drug trade in Asia, and that's how they got their fortune. And FDR became president much later, and the rest is history. So history is very interesting, and there's a lot more truth in history that appears to be fiction. But the fact is that if you look into it, you'll find some very interesting connections. Also, I want to bring to your attention that more and more international schools or cooperative schools have either started up or are thriving here in China. It's a new trend that has gone on for the past 5 years or so, blending East and West and getting multicultural schools, these experimental schools, they call them in China, are quite expensive, and they're like private boarding schools. But parents really like that idea, and China is investing heavily in education, as they always do. And you wouldn't believe the amount of money that some of these parents are paying for these international schools. And you see the advertisements all over China on billboards and magazines and newspapers that education, they believe, is the key for becoming something that they want to become. And this is not always the case, as you may or may not know, that a lot of students go abroad to study and they come back to China to get the same jobs that they normally would have if they would have gone to a second or third tier university in China. So again, you don't always get what you pay for, certainly in China. That's a fact. And right here we have a medical center with international doctors, which is another hot area of growth in China because, as you know, the medical quality here is questionable and the prices are always unknown. Bribes and payoffs happen all the time when it comes to medical care, and that's a shame. But with these international clinics, it's run just like it is in the West, where you have one price. You have reputable doctors with integrity, and that is why Chinese and expats like to visit these clinics.